Okay, well, it is 11:30, and I want to thank the folks that are joining us today, and we are recording this, so with a little bit of luck, this will be posted sometime later in the week. The presentation we're doing today is kind of twofold. For those of you that have been involved with the Golden State Pool Trust, we've partnered with TrueLink Financial, the folks who do the TrueLink card, but they also do some financial advising as well. And so part of what we're going to talk about is the Golden State Pool Trust distribution system and how that works, and to a degree how that works with the TrueLink card. And we might even have a discussion later about when do we use the card and when do we use other matters. But the other thing that I asked Claire to cover is that is how to use the system in your practice, whether you're a fiduciary or an attorney here, using the TrueLink system to advise folks on distributions in your own practice. So part of what we're going to cover is not just how the Golden State Pool Trust uses this system, but how you can actually incorporate it in cases that you don't have under the Golden State Pool Trust. There's quite a bit going on right now, and so we have quite a few new videos on the website, and if you go to GSPT.org, you should be able to find that. And one that for the attorneys that are watching this that you might want to take a look at is we did a 4-hour class in Los Angeles about a week and a half ago on using the Golden State Pool Trust for court-ordered cases. So anyway, something new. Little bit about TrueLink Financial is TrueLink Financial has been around for a couple of years. How long have you been in business, Claire?
For 4 years, that's right.
For 4 years.
2012.
And they have become a major player in the special needs industry, both for trustees and fiduciaries, in a pretty rapid time. And so a lot of what we've been doing with the Golden State Pool Trust is partnering with groups like TrueLink Financial and RMS Team and MetaVest to try to get the best services we can to our folks. So I'm going to turn this over to Claire, and Claire, you might actually, can you hit that in presentation mode? Because I think we see,
Sure.
I think that's the little box in the bottom right there.
Sure thing. All righty. Let's see here. So, as you said, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to share with you how the Golden State Pool Trust disbursement system works. And we think that'll be helpful and relevant because it's really just a way to efficiently manage disbursements from a special needs trust or other trusts where benefits eligibility is a concern, and to make sure that that process is handled consistently, responsibly, and documented well. So we will talk through how that works. I'm happy to take any questions. I guess probably at the end, Steve. Should we save questions for the end,
I'll tell you what,
or do you want to do it along the way?
I'll do here is if you do have questions, I'll be monitoring questions. So if you just type in your questions in the question box, we'll get them sometime during the presentation. So
great. Okay. So let's just start with the problem we're trying to solve, or the challenge where that this system was designed to address. So as most of you likely know, it's a consistent challenge for the trustees of special needs trusts to meet their beneficiaries' needs without giving them cash, since you can't give them cash without undermining their benefits eligibility. And then there's a second piece to that, which is that the Social Security Administration and the California Department of Health Services require that these distributions be at the sole and absolute discretion of the trustee. And it's not that it's a challenge to do that as much as it's a challenge to make sure that that is thoroughly documented and that there's a really solid paper trail around that should there be any audits or questions in the future. And again, this is because if the beneficiary is able to access funds from their trust without showing that discretion and that authorization from the trustee, it puts their benefits eligibility at risk. So, there we go. So Steve has created a compliance guide and toolkit that's about best practices for making disbursements from special needs trusts. They're actually focused on using the TrueLink card in a safe and responsible way, but they actually provide guidance and tools for anyone managing trust disbursements, regardless of whether or not you're using the TrueLink card. So I want to show you before we talk about the system what those guides look like. And then if you're interested in a copy of them, our support team would be happy to provide that to you. You can just email support@truelinkfinancial.com and they'll send you the link to download a copy. So let me just show you quickly here what those look like. So what you see here is the compliance guide, and what this does is you can't really appreciate it much on a webinar because it's just lots of text, but it basically just provides an analysis of everything you need to be considering as you're thinking about making and managing trust disbursements. So it describes the considerations around benefits eligibility. It describes the point of view of the POM. It describes different options for disbursements. It's basically just a really helpful document. Steve will blush, but what we get feedback about this because we share it with a lot of people. And we consistently hear from attorneys that it's the most cogent explanation of benefits eligibility preservation, and POMs as they relate to special needs trusts that some of these folks have ever seen. So I really recommend checking that out and giving it a read. It's written in very like friendly language. I wouldn't quite call it beach reading, but it's really not. It's not bad. The other thing that is relevant is a toolkit that Steve put together, which is basically a bunch of tools, documents that anyone managing a special needs trust can use. And these are mostly around that documentation of discretion and good communication with the beneficiary. And a lot of these are in use with the Golden State Pooled Trust, and that's where this expertise came from. So there's a benefits worksheet to really capture information about the status quo of benefits. There's something we're going to spend a lot more time talking about today, which is a distribution plan. There's a distribution approval worksheet. Then there's some information about sample card settings if you are setting up a TrueLink card. And then there's and letters informing people about how they'll receive their disbursements. There's a sample letter to the Social Security Administration and a sample of an audit. So anyway, just lots of tools that are generally helpful and worth checking out. So definitely reach out if you would like a copy, and we're also going to be posting that on TrueLink's website soon. So back to the PowerPoint here. Wanted to make you aware of those tools. Steve, would you add anything to that?
Well, part of it, I think we'll be covering this is in the presentation, is that, the centerpiece of a lot of what TrueLink does is the card. But as one of the reasons I got involved in this is that, as I like to tell people, there's no such thing as a magic card, including a TrueLink card. It's just a tool to carry out disbursements. So a lot of what that was focused on is that what would I want to have in the file if I were the counsel for a trustee that's using this TrueLink card or the TrueLink system? What would I want? And part of it is that, and we do the same thing with the Golden State Pooled Trust, is that we start off with a distribution plan, which Claire's going to talk about. Basically, we pre-approve the disbursements and use the card to carry out the disbursements here. The premise of a special needs trust is that the trustee has to show sole and absolute discretion. So as far as that's concerned, we like to start off with a plan pre-approving distributions, then allow, and I believe Claire will show us later, typically how they set up the card to assist in that. But even with that, we need to keep good records in case we get audited. So this is part of, trying for best practices, how to stay in compliance, and that's a lot of what we try to do. Once again, we use it at the Dale Law Firm, but we also use it with the Golden State Pool Trust. And so far it has worked very well.
Well, great. So, so from here, what we can do is actually give you an overview of the Golden State Pool Trust disbursement process, what Steve was just mentioning, and sort of the key steps and processes there. So, and we'll talk in more detail about these. But the basic idea is when someone creates a new account at the Golden State Pool Trust, so when a trust account, when a sub-account in the pool trust is funded, there's a critical step, which is the beneficiary and beneficiary advocate, and that might be the same person. Some beneficiaries are their own advocate, others have a family member or guardian or caretaker of some sort who acts as an advocate for them. What they do is they complete a disbursement worksheet laying out their vision for how they would hope that the funds from the trust be used in the short term and over time. Then the trustee, so Steve and his team, will need a process to turn that worksheet into a disbursement plan, so an actual spending plan for how the funds in the trust will be used. That often can be different than the disbursement worksheet, right? There's often a lot of conversation that happens there. And then from there, the trustee actually sets up, sort of like an automatic bill pay, sets up the approved disbursement. And we can look at what that would look like. And then they might, if it's helpful and relevant, create a TrueLink card for that beneficiary or beneficiary advocate. And that's something they do in some cases, but not all. It really depends on how the funds of the trust will be used. And then the last piece, of course, is actually just executing these funds disbursements over time. And this is really the heart of what the pool trust or a trustee does, right, is actually making sure the disbursements are happening, tracking them, making sure they have the required documentation, and then of course, that plan and strategy wasn't perfect, life changes, so approving and reviewing and not.
Oh, Claire, I think,
there?
yeah, I'm here. I think we lost you for a moment.
Oh, okay. What's the last thing I said?
You kind of panicked when it went dead. So why don't you back up just a hair?
Okay, great. So I was just talking about this last step here, step 4, disbursement execution, which is really just about making sure that all the right disbursements are happening on an ongoing basis. So then the plan and the strategy for each beneficiary is also reviewed annually to make sure that it still makes sense with their life situation and their needs and their expectations and, of course, the funds in the trust. So what we're going to do next is actually zoom in on each of these areas and talk a little bit about what we've seen to be best practices in them. So the first piece here, skip through that. This presentation seems to be intermittently animated, so we'll just kind of zoom through that. The first piece here is that disbursement worksheet that we mentioned the beneficiary or beneficiary advocate filling out. And so what this is an opportunity to lay out how they'd like to use the funds to improve the beneficiary's quality of life. So it's actually multiple pages, and on it they detail the amount expected or hoped to be spent on everything from ongoing expenses like $1,000 a month for in-home care or the phone bill every month, to one-time expenses like home accommodations or buying a van or updating the bathroom. And so the key piece of this to fill out this plan is giving the beneficiary and beneficiary advocate information at a high level about what the trust can and cannot be used for. and giving them sort of user-friendly, easy-to-read materials about this. And you can see some examples of this in the toolkit, and Golden State School Trust does a nice job of this. So, as you probably know, if the trust is to be used for food and shelter for SSI recipients, the beneficiary's benefits may be subject to a reduction dollar for dollar, capped at $264.33 in 2016. So that might be a strategic decision that everyone decides to make, but it's one that everyone should go into with their eyes open. And so there's some links here where you can learn more about SSI restrictions. You can really just go to the GSPT website and check out beneficiary resources. And there's also resources for attorneys, both of which describe some approaches to handling paying for food and shelter. And one of the things that Steve, as you all likely know, does a great job on is creating user-friendly materials for beneficiaries, especially in the form of videos, because one of the most helpful things about this worksheet process is it being a really educational experience for the beneficiary and beneficiary advocate, so that, fast forward 6 months, if they submit a disbursement request for something that is not allowed or will jeopardize their benefits, and that disbursement request gets declined, it's not the first time they've ever heard about the restrictions on the use of funds in the trust. So this is really an important expectation setting phase, so that people feel good about future decisions and aren't surprised by them. So from there, it's about turning that worksheet into a strategy, and that's really where the trustees' work is done in terms of this part of trusteeship. So the trustee reviews the disbursement worksheet and then translates that into a plan containing recommendations for the recurring and ongoing expenses for the next year, as well as upcoming one-time expenses. And so this plan is developed in light of the beneficiary needs and goals that were expressed in that worksheet and conversation, knowledge that they have about benefits eligibility requirements, and then, of course, the actual size of the trust. Because that's another sort of critical expectation setting part that happens during this phase. We see this a lot with settlements, where a settlement can seem, $100,000 can seem like an awful lot of money, but then when you actually start matching that over time to expenses, you realize that like most of us with money, you have to make some hard trade-offs. So that's where that can be a big part of translating that worksheet, those essentially requests, into an actual strategy, is level setting and expectation setting about how far the trust can actually go. And so then that disbursement plan is reviewed with the beneficiary or beneficiary advocate and sort of put in place as the straw man. This is the plan, barring a change in events with the Golden State School Trust. So part of that happens sort of at a high level, right? This is what we're going to spend the money on. But then there's an operational question about how those disbursements will actually be made. Checks, electronic transfers, money on the TrueLink card for them to spend directly. So there's actually figuring that out. And then setting up all the approved disbursements in the TrueLink system. And the goal here, which is accomplished as much as possible, is to say, all right, we have a plan for the next year. We can actually sit down and take 10 minutes and schedule that entire plan in the TrueLink system. So we have a sense of so we can look at the budget and projections and have a sense of how much we're going to spend over the next year, and have basically things set up on autopilot. So if we know a bill needs to be paid in January, we can always change that if we need to, but we'd love to not have to think about it again if we're not planning to change it. So we can kind of set it and forget it. We can look at the system to see how that works.
And Claire, I'll just mention, for best practices when we're doing this is not only is this a good thing to do ongoing, and this would be whether you're using GSPT or whatever, but the other nice thing is that we've been asking for the distribution plan before we set up the account. And oftentimes we can discover problems before they happen, because we may have something where they're making requests that we just can't do. So.
Absolutely, which is better to know about as soon as possible. And then to the point of discretion, the disbursement plans, any real-time disbursement requests, receipts, and documentation of approval should all be tracked. And people have different ways of doing that. One way that we can look at is doing that all online in the TrueLink system. So then the next piece here is the TrueLink card. And for some folks, the TrueLink card is a game changer that dramatically improves their quality of life. For some people, it's not necessary and not helpful. So it's really a case-by-case thing. And what the TrueLink card is it's a Visa card, which combines sort of the ease of use of any old Visa card with the ability of the trustee to impose limitations on how the funds can be used to protect benefits eligibility and also make sure the card isn't misused. So the trustee can customize the card to block specific merchants or access to cash or entire categories of spending, all while allowing cardholders to safely purchase what they need when they need it. So there's also a way to generate a record of where purchases were allowed and purchases weren't, and that's about evidence of discretion. So basics on the card, the beneficiary's name is printed on the card, which has the Visa logo on it. The card is not transferable. It can't be sold for cash or given to another person. And then the trustee can load funds directly onto the card from the Golden State School Trust for the beneficiary. So the funds are loaded onto the card based on one of two things. So one could be a disbursement plan, where you could say from the beginning, hey, it seems like you have a $500 a month clothing budget. So I'm going to put $500 on the card for you to go to Macy's. Or it could be based on an individual disbursement request. Basically, it's August, it's time to go school shopping, we need $300 to go to Macy's. So then the TrueLink card can be configured for each beneficiary to allow purchases only where it's been agreed upon. That could be gas stations at the pump, Macy's, Cricket Mobile, a lot of bill pay around cell phone, things like that. So then after making those purchases, the cardholder submits receipts to the trust. And that's important to show where purchases were made. And we can talk more about receipts and when they're necessary and when they're not later, if that's helpful. So the key here is that the cardholder can only spend what the administrator allows and loads onto the card. So as you all know, it's really important for the beneficiary not to have unfettered access to the funds in their trust account. So this is essentially a tool for fettered access. So if a purchase is attempted and there's not sufficient funds on the card, or if the transaction is not allowed. So if the card is set up only to work at Macy's and they make an attempted purchase at Safeway, that charge will just be blocked. It won't go through. Additionally, the card can't be overdrafted, which is important. So if they only have $50 on the card, they can only spend $50, period. So that's the TrueLink card, and we can talk a little bit more about how that works and show you how the system is set up. But the main relevance to disbursements is that the balance is constantly being, that a trustee is constantly trying to strike, or a lot of the cases that we see, and certainly with the Golden State School Trust, is making it as easy for the beneficiary as possible to access their funds for allowed and approved purchases and improve their quality of life and improve their independence and not have to, go to extraordinary measures just to get access to their funds. But at the same time, really showing discretion and making sure those funds are only used in allowable ways. So that's the balance. And for some people, a good way to strike that balance card. So the last piece here, step 4, is, what we've been talking about is you have a strategy, you put it in place, you schedule a recurring disbursement, you give somebody a TrueLink card. Then there's just ongoing execution of disbursement and unexpected needs that come up that weren't anticipated in the disbursement plans. So this could be anything from a car repair to an emergency trip to the hospital. So in this case, the beneficiary advocate or the beneficiary submits a disbursement request via fax or email or online, or I think in true emergencies by picking up the phone. And the trustee and his or her team, so his team in the case of Steve here, reviews the request, and if it's approved, disperses the funds via a check, electronic transfer, or a restricted deposit onto the TrueLink card. And if it's an emergency, those funds can be expedited onto the TrueLink card immediately, and so that's where that can be helpful. So the beneficiary advocate and beneficiary are well informed that they may be required to provide receipts or proofs of purchase, and then it's really important that full documentation of this process be tracked. And that can be done with physical copies and a piece of paper in a file, or in a totally paperless way, like with the TrueLink system. So the last step that's really important is, you have the strategy, you have the execution, dealing with things as they come up, and then you really need to be looking at that holistically and reviewing it on an annual basis as they do at Golden State School Trust. And that's because if you had a plan that involved spending $10,000 a year, but there was an emergency, pulled an extra $8,000 out of the trust last year, you might need to revisit that plan. And of course, over the course of people's lives, in terms of months and years, people's needs and situations change. And so it's important to revisit all of those recurring payments and deposits. So the next thing on our agenda here is to show you all a little bit about how some of this is managed online with the TrueLink system. Steve, anything to add before we jump?
Well, while we switch over, let's go through a couple of key items. And going back to, something I probably say too much is that there's no such thing as a magic card. But, for instance, there's kind of a learning curve with the card. And with it, what we found with a lot of situations is we look at what they want to spend the funds on, but also where do they want to spend it. And I think when you go through the next portion of this, you'll show how that's done. But for instance, let's say we have somebody, for instance, who just loves shopping at Macy's. So we set it up where they can shop at Macy's, which is good and well. But when they make a purchase at Macy's, we have absolutely no idea what they purchased. So what we usually ask them to do is carry an envelope and keep those receipts and then mail those receipts to Shelley. And it's absolutely essential that that happens. And for beneficiaries that can't do this, we just can't be making disbursements and not be able to know what the disbursements are for. The other thing that I'll mention is that as we all know, the disability community is a diverse community with diverse needs. One of the things I really like about the TrueLink card is that you can really limit how much they're able to spend. You can, immediately what's happening, and so it's great for that. On the other hand, one of the good things about it is since it doesn't belong to folks, they can't misuse it. But since our nonprofit is a housing coalition that really favors folks with housing, one of the things with the TrueLink card is it doesn't hurt you and it doesn't help you as far as your credit rating. And so we have some beneficiaries who need to build up their credit rating. And that's a situation where maybe we would turn around and favor using a credit card and making sure that we pay it off in a timely fashion. For instance, we're helping somebody right now to use their funds in the Golden State Pool Trust eventually to purchase a house, and in that case we're actually asking them to rack up their expenses on a credit card and we'll pay off the credit card. So it's one of those things you really have to look at the situation and fit it to that person. And we go back to this, one thing that we look at with folks is before we issue a card or even encourage them to use a credit card is, are they able to responsibly use it, and can they get us back those receipts? And basically, if they don't send us the receipts, we cut off the card. And that's pretty much it. I'll mention one other thing while we switch over, just real life things. The other nice thing is in an emergency, like for instance, right now we have a beneficiary who desperately needs a water heater replaced in their home, and could go through the normal process of having the invoice sent to us, and we've already checked that out. But another option of how to do that is if we authorize the payment through the TrueLink card, we can immediately make that upload the funds for it. And so, for instance, if it was with Sears, and then we could authorize the utilization of this at Sears for the water heater, and be able to expedite distributions. And TrueLink has been looking at pooled trusts across the country, and I think it's fair to say the Golden State Pooled Trust is one thing, and a lot of this has to do with Shelley, is that we are probably the fastest at making disbursements across the country, and we think that's important for our beneficiaries to be able to act as quickly as we can and prudently. So it's been a great tool. Here. We do have a question here, which is the TrueLink card available nationwide, and what does it cost for this service?
Good question. So yes, we have clients in 50 states, and you just sign up online and can order it from wherever you are. It costs $10 a month for the card, and that's pretty much the only fee that people pay.
Yeah. So, and the users that you have, because GSPT is just a small player. Who's using that card?
Great question. So we have almost half of the pooled trusts in the U.S. using the card. We have many attorneys and guardians and fiduciaries who are acting as special needs, as trustees of special needs trusts and other trusts using the cards. We also have lots of guardians, conservators, fiduciaries using the cards for cases that aren't related to special needs trusts. We have families using the card, and they will use it in cases where there's a loved one with dementia or cognitive impairment, where they're managing money for a member of the family who's an adult with disabilities or a child with mental health issues. We also have a lot of folks using the card as it relates to addiction recovery. So rehab centers and families who are essentially working with a family member to recover from an addiction. So really there's lots of different people using the card for lots of different situations, and the kind of common theme is where one person is managing money for someone else, and they want to give them as much independence as possible while needing to put restrictions in place for any number of reasons, ranging from, in the case of older adults with dementia, ranging from other family members or businesses trying to take advantage of their impairment, to a situation where it's really just a tool for supported decision-making. On the topic of supported decision-making, I should actually mention that we have a lot of families using the cards to sort of promote self-determination of an adult with disabilities or a family member with intellectual or developmental disabilities. In that case, oftentimes they'll sort of be shared control where the person using the card or the card holder will actually be very involved in putting the restrictions in place on the card and deciding where it will be used. So yeah, a lot of people are using the card for lots of different things. We also have, we also are investment advisors. We're Truly has a wealth management practice, and in that wealth management practice, we primarily work with trusts, and we work with, we manage the assets of pooled trusts, like the Golden State Pooled Trust, of individual trusts managed by family members or by professionals. And also just some sort of consumers for different reasons. The other thing that we do is work with attorneys like Steve on disbursement, a disbursement advisory practice. And Steve can tell you more about this, but the basic idea is that there are situations where the trustee actually wants some support in ensuring that compliant disbursements are made. So they enlist someone like Steve, typically an attorney, so sometimes also a professional fiduciary, to act as a disbursement advisor and make decisions about when and how the funds from the trust can be used. And so in that case, TrueLink will be the investment advisor. Then there's typically a family trustee, and then a third-party disbursement advisor like Steve. And we manage the wealth as well as providing the system that I'll show you now that allows for multiple parties to be involved in processing disbursements and monitoring the accounts and making sure everything is ship-shape.
Okay, so we're going to have a demonstration, and the only other thing is, for those of us that are sending our children off to college and are a little nervous about handing them the family credit card, this could be a great tool as well. So anyway, so
yes, that's also happening. So when Steve's team, who is managing the pool trust, logs in, or an individual trustee logs into the TrueLink system, what you basically see first thing is a list of the clients or beneficiaries. So what I'm going to show you today is actually this might be what an individual attorney who's acting as a disbursement advisor would see when they log in, or what a professional fiduciary would see when they log in, which is the names of their clients. And then if they click into any of those, they can actually see everything that's going on with the investment account. So, an account summary of what's invested, what's in cash, where it's invested. They can see a history of all of the transactions made on the card with details about who requested that transaction, often attachments, and how the transaction was made, when it was made, things like that. And then when we talk about the disbursement request, all of that is managed through this system. So basically what happens here is that if a request comes in, and it might come in an online form or a physical document from Sarah Lopez, what someone at the Golden State Pool Trust would do, or what a trustee would do, or a disbursement advisor would do, is basically say, okay, this disbursement seems good. I'm going to schedule it by putting in the payee, the amount. So in this case, I'm putting $100 onto the TrueLink card for school clothes. This TrueLink card, I'm going to do that one time. I want it to be delivered tomorrow, the 24th. I am going to say, is that the closing budget? I could add documentation, and I probably would do that. Like if I got a fax, let's say, with that disbursement request, then I would submit that disbursement request, create it, and what I've essentially done is I have requested a disbursement, but because of the way this is set up, I actually have to wait for someone else to approve it. So let's say I work for Steve. Now Steve has gotten a notice that, hey, I've submitted a request for disbursement to Macy's that I need you to approve. And it would look for him like these look for me, which is someone else has requested a disbursement for payment to the Sheraton Orlando. They've attached this invoice. It's for Disney lodging for travel, and I need to approve it. So I can approve it by clicking that button. And now TrueLink is going to process that disbursement, make sure the funds transfer happens, or the check happens, or the transfer to the TrueLink card happens. And then I'll have a record of that here, and now I can see that this was approved by Demo 916, who's me, and it was requested a few days ago by Demo 518. And I can see those details if I'm interested. And so, and of course, all of that translates into the accounts in the summary here. I can also configure the settings on the TrueLink card on Sarah's account. So let's look at what those settings are. In this case, Sarah has access to cash blocked, which is something you'll see almost universally on cards set up to disperse funds from a special needs trust. If I did want to change those, though, and allow withdrawal and ATM access, I just click this button, and all of a sudden it's allowed. Or I can click the button and block it again. I can also do things like block online and phone purchases, so they're blocked here. I might say, oh, you know what, though, let's make an exception to allow phone bills. And then I can also block or allow international transactions as a security measure. Then there's individual merchant settings. And so a common way to set up TrueLink cards for special needs trust is actually to block everything on the card. So there's all these different spending categories that cover all the different places the card can be used, so that you might actually say block every single thing on the card, except phone and TV and cable, which I'm allowed, but you can pay the phone bill. And then you can also go to Exxon for gas and go to Macy's, and those are the only funds, those are the only kinds of disbursements I'm going to make onto the card, is to make purchases at those places. If these were the settings on the card and you took your TrueLink card to anywhere else, it would not work. So that's one way to do it. There's another opposite end of the spectrum, which is for someone who is really trustworthy, knows how to collect receipts, and wants to use the TrueLink card for general spending. I would keep cash blocked, but I might say, you know what, online and phone purchases are fine. I know they're going to submit receipts. They can go to every individual merchant here. I'm also going to say, you know, they can't go to bars and liquor stores, but they can do auto repair, beauty, no dating and escort, no charitable donations, but discount variety stores, fine, grocery, or not grocery stores. I wouldn't, no grocery stores, no restaurants. Let's keep inside of gas stations blocked, but allow gas stations at the pump. Can allow jewelry, laundry, pets, pharmacy, recreation, shopping, utilities, travel and transportation. So we can really allow a lot of things for them to use the card widely and just keep blocked things that we think might cause an issue. So there's lots of different ways to configure the card, and you can really configure it based on the very specific needs of the trust beneficiary or beneficiary advocate. For example, if there's a beneficiary advocate who is really trusted who's using the card, you might just block cash and leave everything open to their discretion because you know you can trust them to turn in receipts and things like that. Additionally, I mentioned how you can set up one-time and recurring payments using the disbursement strategy or the disbursement plan. So to do that, what you actually do is create a disbursement just like we did before, but you set it up to be recurring. So let's say you want to pay the home care agency every month on the 1st for a certain amount. You put that setting in place, and then that would be approved once, and then it would happen every single month. Or if you know that that someone's going to debit the account every month, you can put a budget item in place and say, or actually, you know, if you know that there's going to be a big expenditure in January for that bathroom repair, you can put a budget item in place, so which works a lot like a disbursement, but it doesn't actually process the funds, to give you a sense of how much funds are going to be spent out of that trust account over the coming year, so that if you go over to accounts here and you go to the cash account, the budget item would shows up here, and it says, oh, look, this person's planning to spend quite a bit of money. It's actually going to take their cash account balance negative. So we need to move more funds to the cash account and kind of anticipate they're going to spend a certain amount of money in the spending plan over the next year. So pulling up for a second, what that spending plan allows you to do is think, okay, how much money do we need to have in cash for the next 6 months or the next year to make sure that we can meet all of their needs. So that's a very quick tour and introduction to some of the ways that the TrueLink system works and can be used. It is used by the pool trust, like the Golden State Pool Trust, to manage all of the complexity and need for documentation of discretion around trust disbursement. With that, Steve, would you like to add anything?
Well, you know, a couple things as we get into this here. One thing that we found at the Golden State Pool Trust is that there's a learning curve with all of this, and I'll give you an example. Oftentimes we will block access to food, but we had a situation once where we had a mother who had loaded up a bunch of things, being careful about food, but had also bought for her daughter some Pediasure, which if you've ever, as a nurse, I've actually tasted it. I wouldn't count that as food, but I guess it technically is food here, and it denied the purchase. We were able to fix it pretty quickly, but just imagine being a mother of a disabled child and all the things you're dealing with, having a big basket full of stuff and then having to have your card denied. So there's kind of a learning curve when we're doing this. So we usually suggest folks go to the places they really like to shop at and buy something small. And what we found with a lot of folks is that, if we try to, as much as possible, have them shop at particular places, that it's actually worked out rather well for them. Other things that do come up, it currently does not work for Uber, which is too bad because, transportation is a big thing. So, part of this is you get to understand how this works is to identify how they're going to use it. And for instance, if they're looking at using it for Uber, they're going to need to do something else. And one thing about the TrueLink folks, the folks that work there, is this is a product in development. So they're constantly improving their product. And I bet you someday they'll figure out how to pay for Uber. So what else can I add at this point? One thing, once again, one of the nice things about this card when it works, and one of the problems with the typical special needs trust is, by its nature, it is kind of a paternalistic thing, which is the trustee has absolute discretion and the beneficiary has none. Now, there's times when maybe that is the goal, but there's times when you'd like to really give people more latitude. And so I know this is going to sound like a terrible commercial, but it's really common that we get folks that just tell us how much they love that card here, because it gives them the latitude to be able to go out and make the purchases they need here, so long as they follow the rules and basically be able to act like anybody else. So, the other thing is, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, on that note, I should give you a warning, which is that at the NAILA conference in Denver earlier this year, one of the attorneys there who uses the TrueLink card came up to me and said that he needed to warn us that his person he set up a card for has started proposing marriage to him because she's so happy with the TrueLink card. She said she just wants to marry him. So that was an unforeseen risk.
Okay, well, I think Mrs. Dale will take care of that. But that's interesting. Yeah. So so that's been nice, and it's been useful once again within not just within the Golden State Pool Trust, but we're using it more and more on distribution advisement, and a lot of the trustees we use are using this as well. So are there any other questions? And just to reiterate here, we will make sure that everybody who is on the call will get either the actual toolkit and the and the guide, or we'll give you the link. For those of you that are watching, we will make sure that you have a link so you can actually download the guide and the toolkit as well. So really key with this is the card is a great tool for actually executing distributions, but for those of us that are trustees, there still is work to do. And I personally think it's dangerous just to hand off that card without a distribution plan, because if you got audited, the issue would come up is, are you really using your discretion? And, once again, this is why I actually wrote the guide and the toolkit, is because I was looking at that just as not only as an attorney but as a trustee, as to what is it that I would want to have in that file if I got audited. Now here's a dangerous question, Claire. How many people have lost benefits because of the card so far?
No one that we know of.
Yeah, and I've got a sneaky suspicion we would know pretty quickly if it happened.
I think we'd hear about it.
Yeah.
I think we'd hear about it.
Be that as it may, that's not an excuse to get sloppy. I think the last thing maybe we'll mention is one of the reasons that we did partner with TrueLink on this is that we are looking at expanding the trust. And so for many of you, you know that we're doing classes across the state, and we are expanding. And this has helped us by using these tools to expand without having to increase the number of staff we have, and the number of staff we have right now is Shelley. So, but we are growing quite a bit. The other nice thing about TrueLink, though, is they do have a couple of people that are there to assist when there's a problem. You have some real life people that actually can help beneficiaries on occasion.
Yes, we have a full full support team. So the way our support works is the phone lines are open from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. There's a separate line for card administrators and for card users, and a full suite of automated tools for card users as well. So like we get, for every time someone talks to a person, which they can do whenever they want, they also can check their balance, check recently declined transactions. They can also do both those things via text message too, or online. And then they can call and talk to a person. Administrators can also call and talk to a person. And then when we're not, when the phone lines aren't open, we actually do have an on-call team on who responds to emails and voicemails. Which reminds me that I forgot to mention something that is pretty relevant and important, which is our alerting system. So this is totally up to the person managing the card. So Shelley uses these alerts a lot. Other people, because the Golden State School Trust is very kind of like on top of things and extremely responsive to beneficiaries. Other people don't use the alerts as rigorously, but Shelley gets alerts about everything that happens on TrueLink cards, basically about transactions over certain amounts, about when card balances drop, about whenever transactions are blocked, and you can get those via email or text message. And what she can do is, if there's ever a transaction blocked that she doesn't want to be blocked, she can open up the TrueLink website, and she can basically say, I'll show you a little bit about how this works. She can basically say, oh, that transaction, was blocked at Walmart, let's say, because I thought they were going to Macy's, so I only set up the card to work at Macy's. Oh no. She can actually just click a button, and so she can say, hey, look, you know what? Actually, I didn't want that transaction at Speedway to be blocked. I want to always allow purchases at Speedway. And then on the spending monitor, you can see that Speedway purchases are allowed, and that person can then make purchases at Speedway. So the alerting system is a really powerful tool just to know what's going on and change settings. And I should say, a lot of people don't use this because they set up the card on the front end and just go from there. But if you do want to kind of know what's going on and be able to update settings and communicate with beneficiaries in real time, you can also do that.
Okay, well, excellent. Well, if we have no further questions here, we'll go ahead and close this out. And Claire, how would they find out more about TrueLink Financial? Do you happen to have a website?
Great question, Steve. We do happen to have a website, which I'll show you right here, right now. TrueLinkFinancial.com. So you can visit our website, and you can learn more about our cards, our wealth management, our trust accounting system, and also feel free to contact us. There's a phone number here at the bottom of the website. You can call and talk to one of our team. You can also email us. You can email me, Claire at TrueLink Financial, or support at TrueLink Financial, or you can contact us through the website. And we'll be happy to talk with you more about any of this and about how our tools might be useful for you and the people that you all serve.
There's one last thing, though, I think that might be good to go over. And I know, once again, this is something where we've had a bit of a learning curve. Let's say you want to set up a TrueLink card for a beneficiary or a beneficiary advocate here, what information do we need to have to be able to set up that card?
Sure. So there are two different ways that you can sign up. From the website, you can basically sign up directly as an individual administrator. If you email us and you want to sign up as an organization, like if you're managing cards for dozens of people or hundreds of people, there's a different process we can put you through. So with that process, the organization process, we are verifying your business information. So we need your name and email and the EIN number of your business and your business address. For the TrueLink, if you go through this individual consumer flow, we're verifying you as a person, and we would need your name, your address, your social security number, and your date of birth. Either of those is fine to go through the business route or the individual route. Most attorneys who are managing just a few cards or a few trusts will often go through the individual route. And then to order a card for someone, we need their name, date of birth, and address. And then upon activating the card, we'll need to collect their social security number as well. And that's to prove, that's to verify their identity, which is required by the Department of Homeland Security when opening a new financial account. So in terms of opening a wealth management account, to do that, you actually don't do that on the website. You would talk to our team by emailing me or support at TrueLink Financial. We set you up directly with an advisor, and they would sort of walk you through that whole process. But if it's just a card you want, you can order it right here from the website, or you can call or email our team and ask for that special link to sign up as an organization.
So, okay, so now they've got the card. The card is sent to the beneficiary or the beneficiary advocate. The beneficiary or the beneficiary advocate has to, what's the term, activate the card?
That's right.
But how does the money go from the account to the card? And we have a question here is, does the individual fund the card ahead of time or when the bill comes in, or where does the card get the money?
Great question. So this is a prepaid debit card. And what that means is to use the card, you have to put money on the card first, and the card can only be used to the extent there's money on it. And so the way we get that money on the card is one of two ways. One is you can make a direct deposit from an account onto TrueLink. So each TrueLink card has a account number, like a bank account number and a routing number, and so you can push funds onto that. So a lot of our folks get their payroll deposited onto the card, like their employer, they work a little bit during the month and their employer puts money on the card. Or a lot of our pool trucks actually push funds onto the card in that way. Or you can connect a bank account to the TrueLink card by providing us the account number and the routing number. We verify that bank account, and then only at your command do we pull funds off of out of that bank account and onto the card. So that I'll show you a little bit about how that works. This is a little different if you're using us for, it's even easier if you're using us for wealth management, but if you just set up a card, basically you connect a bank account, and then you can schedule recurring transfers. You can say, I want to put $100 on the card every Monday. You submit that, and then now you have a recurring transfer. Or you can make a one-time transfer and say, I need to put $15 on the card, next, what day is it here? Let's say next Tuesday. And you say submit, and then now there's an upcoming one-time transfer for next week. And then once you put that command in the system, we do an ACH debit from that connected bank account and pull the funds onto the card.
Okay. So the, Claire, you're still there, right?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for instance, with GSPT, each of the cards is tied into their account. And then for the non-GSPT folks, we end up having to tie it to an account. And so that's usually how we do that.
Exactly. So because it's a pooled trust, all the GSPT cards are connected to one common cash account, and then for individual trust, it gets pulled from an individual trust cash or checking account.
Right. So, part of the process is that they have a system that verifies that's a real account, and the first time you order one, it may take a little bit of time, but I think we're ordering a couple of cards a week at this point. And my expectation is about 60% of our beneficiaries will have a card eventually. It will never be 100%, I can guarantee you that, okay? So
yeah, that'll be the day when we have a full trust that has 100% beneficiary. It's hard to imagine that scenario.
No, it would have to be, once again, our community is very diverse. Well, lastly, as we close out, there is a question about whether or not this will be on YouTube, and the answer is yes, assuming it recorded, and it looks like it did. So we'll be doing that. Kind of in closing, here we will make sure that everybody who attended this webinar will get access to the distribution guide and the toolkit. And for those of you that are watching, we'll make sure that we leave information where you can get that as well. It's been a great tool for GSPT here. It's been a great tool for our beneficiaries from the Dale Law Firm in the right situation here, and in the right situation, this can actually give a lot more freedom to our beneficiaries, but we still have to make sure that we're accountable for what those distributions are for. Claire, I'll let you have the last word, and then I think it's lunchtime.
I think you're right. Well, I will just say thank you all so much for joining, and please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions or inquiries about any ways that we might be able to be helpful.